Is it mine? I'm taking it. What is up, everyone?
What is up?
Okay, now we're live. I was giving a thumbs up, and then I was like, wait, hang on, time out. Well, welcome back. Welcome to our live edition of Roundtable Review. Look who we found right here. He's live in the flesh. Pastor Chris is here, and man, we're so excited to review yesterday's message with you guys. Trusting the process, and this is the first sermon of the 1-year challenge in this series. What were your thoughts when you watched it? When you sat through it 4 times? What are some things?
Yeah, go, man. I've got plenty of that. I've got plenty. It's the process. Discipleship is a process.
Come on.
Sanctification is a process.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. The whole embrace the pace part, embrace God's pace. Talking about how, it's kind of in our culture to get up, to rush, to go from one thing to the next, and we're not saying be satisfied with where you're at or be complacent or whatever. We're just talking about be okay with where God has you for the time He has you there and where He's leading you and where He's taking you, and that's very countercultural right now. And I thought your illustration was great, and Wesley did a great job. He was flexing the whole time because somebody told him before service he looked a little small. So, So he was trying to flex the whole time, but he did a great job. I thought that whole part right there was pretty good.
Cool. That's awesome.
So the question we will ask and face over the next few weeks, however long we stay in this, and we have some more powerful testimonies to share. We start with Brett, and we've got others that I don't want to give away just yet. The question is, in this 1-year challenge, like where we're saying, hey, let's legitimately give Jesus a year of our lives.
Right.
Not just, we say this often, not just let Him be involved in our lives, but give Him absolute control of our lives. Dive all in to the body or the church, everything that the church has to offer, from services to small groups to next steps to opportunities to serve, and not just watch other people do ministry, but begin to discover your own purpose and develop your own ministry. Here's the question that we will ask at some point is, are we discipled into salvation, or are we saved into discipleship? And the answer, I believe, is yet to be revealed, and I believe that God reveals that on an individual basis. I have seen, specifically in people who were raised in church,
Right.
who like, they know what Sunday school is because they were there every week and they were there early, and the only reason that they wanted to be there was because their teacher brought biscuits or donuts, but you were there nonetheless. Yeah. I'm talking about people who were raised in a building, hearing the stories like my children are and will be. Are you discipled into salvation, or are you saved and then discipled? My personal story is different from someone who was not raised in church, or who was predominantly unchurched, or had bad experiences in church and maybe didn't do church the way that we did church, or has discovered a new way to even be part of a church. Those are like revelational moments and transformational moments where, yes, the old is gone and the new has come. My story is not that way. My story was, I was really good at compartmentalizing and manipulating other people. And so I had to be discipled into salvation, then work that salvation out, drift away, fall away, depart from the faith, whatever you want to call it, and then discipled back in again. And then receive salvation, truly follow Jesus, and add more discipleship. So I love how you open the series like, hey, trust. It's really trust God's process. we're all looking for like that quick fix moment, that transformational, I'll never be the same again. And for most people, now there are some who, I mean, Joe Oden is a good example. I mean, went from just way out there, mixed up in all kinds of stuff, into born again and not going back to it. But most people are discipled and saved and then discipled and continue to be sanctified and work out their salvation. So trusting God's process was a big opening for me.
Yeah, so along the journey, along this process of discipleship, this challenge, even this challenging season that we're in, how we respond in the midst of your journey is going to be a big testament. And again, like our character that we're talking about through this series, and as we reference him a lot, Joseph, man, he had this dream, and it started out, and this was God-given, and all right, God's starting me on this journey, and one day my brothers and my family, they're going to bow before me, but he didn't know what the process was going to look like in order to get there. And so how we respond by not throwing in the towel, by trusting God, by leaning into him, I think is going to be a big factor and a big thing moving forward as, again, maybe you accept that 1-year challenge of saying, hey, yeah, what does next steps look like? What is this school year going to look like? Am I just, because things aren't going necessarily my way, am I going to, no, we're going to stick through this and we're going to trust God for the moment. Pastor Dylan, you referenced the pace that we all run and we all walk. Maybe you live this life. Pastor Chris, what was your take on the pace, and what are your thoughts on that?
My first thought was the disciples walking with Jesus over that 3-year period, and still, even though having been with Jesus, still never really arriving until even after Jesus was gone, and then even after that, they still had things to do. So I think we see the process that God has for us, and then the pace that sometimes Jesus and God sets for us. But right now, our pace it's been extremely interrupted.
Sure.
And I don't know that God is nearly as upset about that as we are. I think normally I get more upset about my pace being interrupted than Jesus does. And sometimes Jesus is using those things to interrupt my pace because he's not in as big of a hurry as I am. I think of Peter grabbing the sword and he hit a servant, which I never got. I was like, if you wanted to start a war, like start with a soldier, not a servant. But he was like, it's like he found the smallest guy. He's like, ah, And then I don't know why he didn't keep swinging.
Right.
Why he just hit that one dude. But Jesus says to Peter, hey, sheathe your sword. In other words, I see that as hey, get back in line. Following Jesus, sometimes it means slowing down.
Yeah.
And I feel like we miss I would say the stability in solitude, just getting along, because we operate at such a high pace,
Sure.
and I do, and it's necessary at times, but this slow down, pace yourself. It's not a sprint. It is a marathon. It's a walking with Jesus, not necessarily always a running with Jesus, although at times he will take off and we need to keep up. So I love the idea and the illustration. I think we'll feed off that for the next few months. I know walking with Jesus means staying in line.
Yeah.
Being willing to slow down and embrace solitude just as much as it means, hey, don't get left behind. Don't fall back. Don't follow at a distance. Those are both important in me walking this thing out with him.
I wanted to bring up, and continue your thought, but I just want you to reference, we had a thought and creative team meeting So Michael Todd tells this story about Jesus as a young boy at 12 years old, and he was preaching in the synagogues and in the temples, and his mom was looking for him, and she was like, "Where have you been?" And he said, "Woman, I've got to be about my Father's business."
Woman, which was a respectful
Right.
term for mother
Mom.
at that time.
But Michael Todd even pointed this out, that he said even Jesus had to understand at one point the pace of God in which he had for him. And then for 18 years we don't hear for Jesus. You made an incredible point in creative team meeting last week. Do you remember it? Can you share that?
The only one that's coming to mind is about the dog.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when we set our...
I wasn't there. I'm extremely intrigued. Like, I'm hanging on the edge right now.
It's just we were talking about following Jesus, following the pace, following God's pace, and how a lot of times we want to set our own pace. We want to do our own thing and lead the way into wherever we're going next. But a lot of times we end up like a dog just chasing their tail, running around in a circle, and end up looking foolish and looking like an idiot because you're just running in a circle and you're not going anywhere. You're going fast, but you're not going anywhere.
Right.
And so that was kind of the thought we had there, and that's kind of where my thought process was going. But and talking about how sometimes we get really upset or frustrated or whatever whenever our pace is interrupted, our lives are interrupted. And it's like, why is that? Why do we get so frustrated with that? And what you point out, like, Jesus doesn't care. God doesn't care about our pace. Well, it's because we have put our faith, we've put our trust, we measure our success, we put our stability in that pace, in this life, in the way that things are supposed to go, the way things are supposed to happen. And when that doesn't happen, then we're kind of like, well, now what? Right. But God knows that He can use that pace, this way of life, that way of life, pandemic, non-pandemic, whatever, to accomplish His goals. And so when we put our trust in God and understand, like, maybe God does want us to run at this point. He's got us going level to level to level to level, or sometimes He's got us. He's trying to teach us something right here, and if we'll just slow down and understand what He's trying to show us, then maybe we can go on to the next thing. But we kind of get frustrated with that because we've put so much of our stability in those things.
Right.
God, what are you teaching me? That's a daily question. Lord, what do you want me to see? What do you want? Lord, I use the word Lord intentionally because a lot of people confess or believe Jesus as Lord, but really confessing and making Him Lord is a greater challenge. So that's a daily challenge. Lord, what are you trying to show me? Lord, what are you trying to tell me? Lord, what are you trying to teach me? Who do you want me to see? And I love the idea of the pace because it makes me mindful of there are times when I need to run, and I need to run with endurance. And then there are times where Jesus Himself would stop, and he would Himself practice a Sabbath. He would Himself practice solitude. There were times when Jesus was surrounded by crowds of people, and He would leave that crowd of people to spend time with His Father. So we're talking about Jesus walk away from ministry to spend time with His Father. There's going to be some things over the next few weeks. I was just looking. There's so much in the story of Joseph. Pride, purity, the pit, the promise, the prison, the palace. There's so much, and we're just gonna dig in and have a great. I'm excited about studying more in depth the story of Joseph over the next few weeks, while at the same time helping our church understand that God has a plan, and normally that plan is revealed through a process, not just a point in time, but points in time as we keep pace, and then we walk in. I want to go to peace because it's important for me to walk with some sense of peace so that I don't have an anxiety attack.
I quoted you yesterday because in the midst of what seemed like some of the most challenging seasons that Kelsey and I have faced, I remember you've always said, peace and calm in Jesus. Peace and calm in Jesus. Because ultimately, like, it's not like the end of the day, getting home from work. Like, that is peaceful, but it's not like peace, like, in and of itself. Like, peace comes from Jesus. Like, peace comes from God. Like, that to me is really relaxing, and knowing like who I am in Him, to me, is the ultimate peace. Like, peace and calm in Him. What stood out to you guys when we really started talking about that? We even mentioned Matthew chapter 6, that God cares wonderfully about us, and mentioning Joseph, that the Lord was with him and peace was with him through the process. What did that look like for you guys?
Yeah, I thought when you pointed out the whole Thanksgiving part, which is what our reading plan is about this week, thankfulness in uncertain times, thankfulness and uncertainty, in times of uncertainty, or however it's phrased. So you can check that out on the Facebook page and read along with us on that this week. But I've shared that in. We had a Wednesday night that we did. Me and Pastor John, and I believe Amber was up there, Mr. Chucky. Talked about worship and why it's important and why we do it and the ways to do it. And we've had talks and messages on prayer and how to do that. And all of those things, the best thing you can do to start out in a time of worship and a time of prayer, whatever it be, is to start out with literally thanking God for everything you can think of.
Right.
And the first time, sometimes you're like, okay, thank you for my house, my job, my family. And you just kind of get stuck. But then, man, after a week, I'm like, man, thank you that I've got nice shoes to wear. Thank you that I've got, and you start thinking about the things that we really have, especially in America, and the things that we're blessed to have and to take part in. And then the reason that that's so important is because it adjusts our attitude, and it sets the atmosphere. And so our attitude is no longer, I've got to go to God because everything in my life's falling apart. But now it's, I'm coming to God because I know how faithful He's been. I know how good He's been to me. And whatever He decides to do, His will is perfect and He has my best interest. And it also sets that atmosphere of thankfulness. Think about when your kids come to you, if you've got kids. If they're all the time, which is probably most of the time, they're coming to you with, Daddy this or Daddy that, and that can get old. But when there's that one time where they're like, just, you talk about all the time, they just come and sit with you and just want to watch a movie with you, want to hang out and spend time with you, or that one time where they actually said thank you when you gave them something. And it's like it's a whole different type of interaction there between parent and child, and between God and us when we come in that way. Mostly it's for us to kind of adjust our attitude and set our focus on Him. And in doing so, and you remind yourself of all those things.
Right.
Now I'm reminded of all the things I do have, the security I do have, and all of a sudden you're a little more at peace. Yeah. You've got a little more peace.
Yeah, I'm going to be careful how I say this because I don't want to dig too deep in theology today, but I believe that praise redirects my attention. Praise redirects my attention, but prayer redirects God's attention. When I'm praying, so as you just mentioned, this made me think of this. There are different tones in the voice of my children. There are some tones, like they can call my name all day, I'm not going to hear it. But then there is another tone that if I hear that tone, I'm going to drop everything that I'm doing. Now, I'm not God, but I think I understand this as a father. And I know God is omnipotent and omnipresent. So, I'm being careful with this biblical absolute, like prayer redirects God's attention as if He wasn't already paying attention or if He wasn't already present. I'm not neglecting that. What I am saying is that there is a difference between a courtesy call and then truly calling out.
Yeah.
A true call out to God. And I can hear the difference when my children are giving me a courtesy call, or they're just saying my name, or they're saying their mama's name over and over again, which is what I hear more often than anything in my home. and then when they really need me, or more importantly, when they realize they really need me. And that tone, that call is different. And I want to have the tone that I catch the Father's ear. Yeah. I want to have the heart in my prayer time that it's not just getting it done. It's not just casual, go through the motions. It's a true, intimate time where I am calling out to God. That story where I get that phrase, peace and calm in Jesus, it's actually kind of silly, but I was in the 8th grade. I was on deck to bat in a high school game. I was an 8th grader playing on the varsity team at a small school, and I was on deck to hit, and my coach, Scotty Wise, in Minden, Louisiana at Glenbrook, came up to me. He could tell I was standing there. I was about to rub the tape off my bat, because I was ready, man. I was getting up. He walked over to me and he said, "Hey, peace and calm in Jesus." And I was like, "Okay, yeah." He's like, No. I want you to say it. I may have been a freshman. I did play as an 8th grader, but I played more as a freshman. He said, No. I want you to say it. Come on, say it with me. And I was like, peace and calm. And I'll never forget, like in that moment, I know it seems like a super spiritual thing to say, but for me, it was a very practical phrase that brought some peace to me. Guys, I was saying that in front of 10,000 people in Brooklyn, New York, like 20 years later. And I still say it to this day whenever things are really getting overwhelming. Okay, peace and calm. And I will never forget that moment, or the way that just saying that phrase and taking a deep breath and saying that phrase and taking a deep breath truly helped me experience what we believe to be the peace that surpasses all understanding. Hey, let's move to purity and wrap up.
No, absolutely. And again, purity really comes with this lifestyle, this pursuit after purity, this pursuing. All right, listen, purity is going to look like something. I loved what you said last week in your message, that really discipleship is going to look like something. So everything that we do, this pursuit after Jesus, who is the embodiment of purity. He is all things pure, all things clean, and who we're striving after and who we're striving to be like. It's going to take us in our lifestyle through this process exemplifying that more than ever, this pursuit after purity.
Yeah, and we're not just, and you pointed this out yesterday, we're not just talking about sexual purity, although that's a huge thing.
Right.
And especially in our culture, people don't understand just how much that has to do with your mental health, emotional health, let alone your spiritual health, and all of those things together, and how that is so interwoven. But talking about just a pure lifestyle and a godly lifestyle of as Scripture says, thinking on things that are pure, lovely, right, good, all of these things, setting your mind on that, setting your heart on that, only watching things that are pure, only listening to things that, all of that type of stuff, having conversations about that type of stuff, is because, and I was thinking about this earlier when we were talking about embracing God's pace and asking the question, what is God trying to show me here? Mm-hmm. So a lot of times, we go through our life and months, years, some people their whole life never stop and really think about what's going on in their life at that moment.
Right.
And how either that they've contributed to that, something's happened to them, how they got there, but it's just they're trying to survive one moment to the next, and they're trying to live, and not realizing a lot of the times, we can say this happened to me, that happened to me, life happens, and all this stuff. But sometimes if we just kind of live a pure lifestyle, let the Holy Spirit work that out in us, we'd save ourselves a lot of headache and realize, that we don't have to stray off to the right or to the left, but if we're following Jesus at his pace, we're living that life, the peace comes with that, then all of a sudden some things start to fall into place, and it's like, oh wait, hey, the world's not ending at this very moment. It's going to end at some point. Anyway.
Well, and to me, it's people are watching. Like the world is watching. They're looking at people during this process. Man, how are you reacting? How are you responding? Are you walking at a certain pace? Are you in a hurry to get somewhere or do something? Or what's your pursuit after purity look like or not look like?
Yeah, so people are attracted to authenticity.
Yeah.
And they are offended by fake. And not only are they offended by that fake, but they use the fake as justification to be offended again, a real God
Yes.
because of fake people. I'm gonna do an entire week on this purity piece of Joseph's story, because imagine if whatever led up to that moment, however many times he was in that room along
Sure.
with that woman
Sure.
before she finally ripped his coat off. However many kissy faces or eye winks or times he might have brushed against her when her husband was around, or if he even brought any of that on him. We don't really have all those details. Right. I don't imagine that was the first time.
Right.
And it was just like she woke up that morning and thought, you know what, today I'm going to have an affair with Joseph because I've been looking at him enough. I believe there's probably things that led up to that moment. I will say, I believe that if Joseph would have adhered to that affair, if he would have succumbed to that temptation, he would probably have been murdered.
Yeah.
And he would have never been who he became in that moment. And I actually live in this round table. I live with the acute awareness that there is no thing hidden which shall not be revealed. To be sure and know your sin will find you out. That movie will find you out. That message will. That song, that click, that site, that what, etc. That flirtatious, that private message, etc., etc. Man, when you expose yourself to evil, okay, you allow evil to invest in you. And the only way to avoid that is to, I believe the Bible says, shun the very appearance.
Right. That's right.
And set up high enough boundaries and accountability that you don't even have to go through that situation.
Right.
Like the enemy has to hunt you down and really get you in a place, because I just wonder how many people had God-sized potential inside of them, but they murdered the plan of God because they succumbed in a moment to impurity.
Wow.
And the plan of God for their life, what God wanted to use them, who God wanted to use them to reach, was absolutely murdered because they thought that they could make a decision that wouldn't have a consequence. Whatever that looks like, we could apply that to all kinds of areas outside of purity. So I'll say this and then we'll shut down. I do believe that the only way to true intimacy with Jesus is through purity.
Yeah.
Through purity in every aspect. So purity, I heard Andy Stanley say this a long time ago, only purity paves the way. Purity paves the way to true intimacy. True intimacy with Jesus, true intimacy with your spouse. And if you don't have purity, then you don't have true intimacy. You can't have true intimacy because that's who he is. Yeah. He is the embodiment of purity along with intimacy. So that was important. I wish more people understood that, because man, they're crucifying themselves over and over again, and then being discouraged because they're not as close to Jesus as they want to be. So this week, I think we're going to go into the pride of Joseph's story. That's what we'll be going into. What was the thankfulness in
times of uncertainty?
I'll say this in closing. I thought Pastor Weston did a great job. I'm very grateful for an incredible staff. Thank you for listening in. I loved your closing. Brett, thank you for letting us share your story. So powerful what God has done and going to continue to do. And I would just say this for anybody listening. We still have 9 people watching live. If God can do it for Brett, if God can do it for us, hey, he can do it for you. That is the challenge. You are the challenge. Let God reveal himself.